Good morning, everybody. Just going to give everybody a couple of minutes to filter in, and then we will officially start the webinar at around 2 minutes past 10. So if you don't hear any sound, it is correct, but we're just giving everybody a couple of minutes to just join the webinar. Thank you very much. Okay, so thank you everybody for joining our webinar today. This is a virtual demonstration of our updated version of care cost benchmarks for financial year 24-25. I'm Joe Foley. I'm the head of data at LaingBuisson's. Alongside me I have William Lang, who is the chairman of LaingBuisson's, who will be running the demo. I just wanted to give the opportunity to give a little bit of background of who LaingBuisson's are. I'm sure many of you are aware, but just in case you aren't, we are business intelligence providers to the healthcare, social care and education sector. We've been doing that for over 30 years, and we are also a provider to ONS. They choose us to provide statistics to them. What Care Cost Benchmarks is a toolkit for care providers, where you see the discrepancy between funding levels from local authorities, and you can also adjust it in an advanced way as well. We'll get into a little more detail about that further on in the webinar. So I'm just going to move the slide along. So yeah, as I said, I'm Joe Foley. I'm the head of data here at LaingBuisson's, and we've got William Lang, who is the author of Care Cost Benchmarks. We will run a demo shortly, and then we will give an opportunity for question and answers later on in the session. If you do that by please raising your virtual hand, or if you drop a message in the question and answers. If you do raise your virtual hand, just a disclaimer that I can allow you to speak. So if we want to get into a little bit of conversation later on in the session, we can do that. So I'm just going to change my screen over to the product. Can you see the spreadsheet, William?
Yes, I can, yes.
Okay, would you like to begin?
Right, well, thank you very much, Joe, for that introduction. And we've got the sheet just showing what this is, Care Cost Benchmarks for the year 24-25. And also, very importantly, it has projections to 25-26, because we're coming up to that very shortly. In 3.5 months' time, it will be 1st of April 25, at which time local authorities will be applying new fee rates for their external providers of care services. So what I'm going to do is to run briefly through what Care Cost Benchmarks does and what its purpose is, And I'm going to be asking Joe, who's got control of the spreadsheet, to change to navigate through the spreadsheet. So we're on the cover page at the moment, and I'm just going to ask you, Joe, if you could, to move to a quick start, which is simply the page from which you start everything. And I'm going to ask you, Joe, to click on here to go to the local data worksheet, and this is where it all starts from. And you can choose any local authority you wish within England, or any region indeed as well. So what's the purpose of it all? The purpose is this. I mean, the spreadsheet goes back more than a decade now. It was started with when we were asked to do this by the Joseph Rowntree Foundation. And the purpose then, it was essentially the same as it is now, to have an evidence-based document, spreadsheet, which will enable providers to argue the case with local authorities for reasonable fee rates. And the objective of the spreadsheet is to include all of the costs of care homes, including not just the operating costs, but also the head office overheads, if they're relevant, and also the capital costs of providing the accommodation itself. So the purpose of it hasn't really changed. It's also used by local authorities, hence those that wish to look at the evidence base, but primarily it is here for providers to argue the case. Now, where does the data come from? It comes from a number of sources, but the two main ones are for the non-staffing costs, that is premises and procurement, etc. That comes from the results of the large fair cost of care exercise. It was carried out in 2022, and I'm sure everyone will be familiar with that. There were many faults with that process, but it did give some hard data on those elements of cost. But that's the minority. The bulk of the cost, as you know, from care homes is in the staffing, and that what we need in order to populate the model that we use is hard data, which we do have from providers coming bang up to date in this year, 24-25, which will show what the level of staff input is into care homes. So basically, there are two elements to staffing costs. One is the staffing input, and the other is the pay rates. So we get both of those from providers. The interesting thing about the staff input is it really hasn't changed very much over the period of the 10 or 15 years that we've been doing this. But of course, the pay rates have most certainly changed, and we're coming out now of a period in which there has been a lot of extra inflation, additional inflation in the economy, which has given rise to problems. But what our spreadsheet care cost benchmarks does, it gives a bang up to date view of what actual costs are with today's pay rates. But then it goes further, because and this is particularly important for negotiating fee levels in the future, it looks at what the pay rates will be in the next financial year. And for this, what we know is that, generally speaking, the pay rates follow national living wage. So we can make a reasonable projection of what pay rates will be simply by taking the ones in the current year and projecting them forward using the what we know to be the national living wage rate in 1st of April 2025. But there's a double whammy, as everyone knows. In this case, there's also the national insurance uplift, and that has a significant impact on the costs in 2024 to 25. So the projections will take this into account. And there is, as I'm sure everyone is aware, a big question mark over whether local authorities will be able to afford to pay at a reasonable rate. So let's go into the body of the spreadsheet itself and just illustrate what sort of information you can get out of it. So at the point where we're at here, we can choose any local authority we want. So let's, Joe, if you could take the example of Blackburn and Darwin.
Yeah.
Anything else? And you'll see that I'm going to do this the same thing on my own computer and just see what the figures are, because I can't see them on the screen personally. I hope everyone else can. So let me just select Blackburn. Right. So what I'm going to do now is to go from the quick start tab into the yellow tabs, which you can see at the bottom, which show what the fair cost is for the current year and then for projected years. And we have 4 different modes of care. One is nursing without dementia, one is nursing with dementia, one is residential, and residential with dementia. So there are 4 different modes of care. So let's go to the first one, which I can see there, which is nursing 65 plus in this current year, 24-25. So what that shows is what the median cost of care is for nursing care, based on all the data that we have, and it comes out at a figure of £1,128 a week. And then we have in this summary block what the average local authority paid fee is for the first half of 24-25, and this comes direct from the government, from the Department of Health and Social Care. And it shows a figure of, and what they did is they've asked each local authority to provide the actual, or the provisional, actually the actual fee rates that they've been paying in the first few months of 24-25. And what this shows in Blackburn and Darwin's case is that they were paying, or claimed to be paying anyway, £1,113 a week, which leaves a deficit of £16 a week. Now, that might be surprising, but I must draw your attention to the block on the right-hand side, which is a note on average local authority fee rates. Now, this does not apply to all local authorities, but it certainly, we're aware, applies to some. But some local authorities simply have not reported their fee rates correctly. What a number seem to have done is, even though they were asked to provide the information without including NHS FNC, some of the local authorities have actually included it, which means that when we've added on NHS FNC, we get to a figure for what the local authority fee rate is, which is significantly higher than what it really is. And that may well be, in the case of Blackburn and Darwin, why there is only a deficit of £16. So it's a health warning, basically. When you're using this, don't necessarily take at face value what the local authorities say that they're paying, even though this is an official document, or derived from an official document, which has been circulated by the Department of Health and Social Care. So there's a bit of work to be done there as far as getting correct reporting goes. Now, just illustrate this, because that's one of the reasons why the fee gap or discrepancy may seem to be quite low, but for nursing care in particular. But if we then go into the residential care element, which is the 24-25, right, I'm going to do the same thing. What we'll see is that the median cost is £889 for residential care without dementia. The average local authority provisional, which is unaffected by this NHS FNC issue, £749, giving a deficit of fee gap of £140, which I think will sound more reasonable to most people who are aware of the fee rates that are being paid, particularly in the Midlands and the north of England. So that's residential care for dementia, and then we have the next one, residential care that's residential care with dementia. There's also a version for residential care without dementia. Then if we move on to the projections, And I'm going to go to the 20, if you go, Joe, to the nursing 25 to 26 projection.
Yep.
That shows that 25 to 26 is projected to be £1,203 in Darwin, as opposed to the 1,128 in 24-25. So it gives you a basis for looking at how the fee rates that are being paid at the moment compare with what we regard as being a fair cost of care. And then secondly, and perhaps even more importantly, how those that fair cost is going to inflate, taking into account national living wage, national insurance uplift, and also the cost of inflation in the for the other costs of care apart from the staffing costs. So that's the those are the sort of headline findings from, and you do this for every single local authority in England, which are about 150. What I've shown you so far is just the top block, which is sort of bounded in a black box. Below that, there's a lot more detail about how the costs are broken down. So if we're on for any of the versions of the spreadsheet, you can see that it divides into going downwards. It divides into the cost lines, starting with staffing and then going on to premises and then going on to head office and onto capital costs. Getting at the end to the total. What we also do here is that the fair cost, basically, which I showed you before, is based on an average for the sector value of a care home place or value per bed, which roughly, and this was something which came out of the 2022 fair cost exercise, it ranges between sort of 60 and 80,000 pounds, depending on the region you're in. But of course, we know that some care homes cost an awful lot more, and some legacy care homes, the value is much less. So what we do at the bottom here is we give a low and a high figure for what a fair cost of care is, depending on whether this is a legacy, which is only just registrable, and a sort of an investment quality care home, which might be as much as £150,000 per bed, as opposed to legacy, which might be as low as 30,000 per bed. So it gives you a lot of granular information for a number of purposes. The main purpose, as we say, we think today, is negotiations with local authorities for 25 to 26. Should mention just one other thing before we turn to any questions you might have, and that is that one of the changes we've made this year is to increase the rate of return on capital that is built into the spreadsheet. The rate of return on capital was previously 6%, which reflects the sort of rate that a care home with the care home, a typical care home might pay for 100% finance over a 30-year period. We've raised this to 7% to take into account the fact that the money that is the wall of money that was available for investment in care homes has largely been used up now, and we're now talking about what rate of interest that you would have to pay in order to draw in additional finance from whatever source is available. So that's a significant change. It doesn't make that much difference to the totality, but raising it from 6 to 7% rate of return on investment in accommodation. So I think perhaps that's sufficient detail to be going on with. So what I'll do now is just open this up to questions.
Just whilst the question is coming, William, I'm right in thinking that this has been used in a court of law, hasn't it? When we'll use we'll use the story anonymously, of course, but this has been upstanding, hasn't it, for leverage in that respect?
Yes, it has absolutely. There have been many judicial reviews of of the fees that local authorities are paying, and this spreadsheet has frequently been used as evidence in those cases. Yes.
And is it worth just having a quick look at the parameters tab for an advanced use? We'll not get into the nitty-gritty of it this morning, but just to show how that's used.
I'm sorry. Say it again, Joe.
Parameters tab where you can put your own figures in.
All right. Yeah. Thank you very much for reminding me of that. Very good. So all of the data which is used to populate the model is within the parameters spreadsheet. All of these numbers are factory set of what we believe to be reasonable figures. However, if individual providers or indeed individual local authorities wish to alter these parameters, then they can do so within the spreadsheet. So we'll take let's take an example of pay rates. So the pay rates that we have are shown in, I think, we go down to this.
The pay rate indexation.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, Joe, if we just move up, this is perhaps more important rather than pay rates, because they're fairly uniform within any particular region. But if we look at the rows 33 to about 58, which gives the benchmark figures for the amount of staff input, the hours per resident per week. And what you'll see here is that if you can go down to row 33 at the start. So we are basing all of the costs on an assumed 8 hours per resident per week for nursing care in nursing homes. And the figures there we give, there are different figures for the number of staff, non-nurse care hours per resident per week for nursing and residential homes, which are between 21 and 24. And then it goes downwards, showing the number of staff hours per resident per week for cooks and chefs and other hourly paid staff, and so on. So those, as I say, are factory set. But if for one reason or another a local authority wishes to change those, or for a particular care home, they want to look at a resident mix which is different from the average, then it's possible simply to overwrite those numbers with other different numbers. And that would cascade through into all of the yellow tabs which we've looked at, and raise or lower what the fair cost of care should be. So,
yeah, so it makes it completely customizable, doesn't it, for the users? Really,
it's customizable for many uses. Yes.
Yeah.
This particular spreadsheet is set up, of course, for care homes for older people. Equally, it could be used by changing the staffing input for younger adults as well. So it is very flexible.
Yeah, absolutely. So, right, we've got a few questions coming in. One of them is just asking to show the local data tab again. So I'll just click over to that whilst we address the other questions. I'll leave that on screen. So the first question is there similar for supported living 18 to 65 and for care homes 18 to 65 with people with learning disabilities?
Right, well, that's the point I was just making, that this is designed around the needs of older people, but it is possible to flex the parameters and flex the return on, flex the amount of capital needed to set up and maintain an 18 to 64 care home or for learning disabilities. So it is possible to flex it to give you a sensible output for that as well, yes.
Thank you, William. Next question, who is dictating that a 10% operator's profit is appropriate?
This was a question which came up a lot in the 2022 Fair Cost of Care exercise. And we worked with 10 local authorities to do this. and we always advise them that a 10% profit is a reasonable one. A number of local authorities felt that this was far too much, and that it should be down to 3% or 5%. I think any businessman would say that that is not realistic. But where did we get the data from? The data comes from looking at, and this is quite a sort of complex argument, so bear with me. If you want to value a care home, this is how a valuer would do it. It's basically it's a sustainable multiple of operating profits of EBITDA. If we assume, just for the sake of argument, I'm not saying this is a hard and fast figure, that a decent quality care home sells at 8 or 9 times EBITDAR, then that implies an overall 11% return on capital is being sought on a whole business basis. If you then take off the return on the capital for providing accommodation, then after various adjustments which can be explained, in fact they're explained in the guidance notes to the care cost benchmarks. If you do those adjustments, then you come up with a figure of 10% return on operations. And just as a matter of interest, that is very similar to the return on operations that you would expect or is actually achieved for home care. So, and that you would expect. There would be a sort of consistency in return on operations after having taken out of the calculation the return on accommodation. So it's a bit of a complex argument, but it is dealt with in detail within the guidance notes.
Thank you. Next question. Does the breakdown show costs invested in digital technology and solutions? If so, what trends are we seeing?
Right, it doesn't specifically show that, but it is contained within at least one of the cost lines for other costs. But no, we do not specifically cover that.
Thank you very much. One of the next questions, would we be sharing the recording? Yeah, we will be sending out the recording after the call. We won't be sending the spreadsheet around because that is the product, but there will be a link to purchase the spreadsheet that will come around in a follow-up email. Next question is, it appears on the earlier tabs we were looking at the example of Blackburn and Darwin, that the local authority is paying less than the required cost and profits to run bed in this area, so that the operator is losing money. Have I interpreted this correctly?
Not necessarily that they're losing money. They may have adjusted their operating costs they may have possibly reduced the level of staffing. But also, this is what the local authorities are paying. So if that particular provider has private payers as well, then the private payers are subsidising the public payers. And that basically is the overall story. It's cross-subsidisation by private to public.
Thank you very much. Another question. So there is a comparison between the median cost and the average fee paid in the spreadsheet. Is there a possibility to compare like for like? So average cost and average fee paid, or median cost and median fee paid, as they are slightly different measures?
They are, but we believe it's better to use median because they're less impacted by very, very high outliers. And what we have to realise, what we've taken into account, is that all of these numbers, there can be huge variations in any individual care home. So in Blackburn and Darwin, for example, there may be homes which are running on double the staff input to others, and some which are running much less. What we're trying to do here is to give an overall local authority average, which makes sense to compare with what the local authority is paying. But we believe in general that we did have in the past used mean average rather than median, but we believe that it's more sensible to use median now.
Thank you. Next question. Have we compared the outputs to other calculators such as Care Cubed?
We don't have a subscription to Care Cubed, so we can't.
Fair answer. Could you please explain the OPCO and PROCO scenario?
OPCO and PropCo. Right, not quite sure what that. I think I know what it means, but OPCO is I mean the taking the accommodation costs out of the equation. That would be the situation in which a care home was operating on 100% finance from sale and leaseback. It's essentially it's all covered in this model, that it's we divide out the capital costs from the operating costs, so it is there.
Perfect. Thank you very much, William. I think that was it for questions. I might leave it open for just another 30 seconds if anybody wants to jump in. You should see a QR code on your screen now, an email address and phone number. If you scan the QR code, it will take to the product page, have more information, and a couple of demo screens on there and a couple of previews. But also failing that, we'll also send out an email of the recording to delegates and attendees today. So thank you very much for attending, everybody. Unless there's anything you want to add, William, I think we can.
No, thank you very much, Joe. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, and thank you for your time. Thanks, William.
Okay.